We place an immense amount of trust in the objects that define our reality. History textbooks, national maps, and thick dictionaries are presented as the final, objective word on the truth. A postcolonial perspective looks past the content of these objects to find their origins. It demands we ask a more difficult question. Who actually held the authority to author these records in the first place? History, nationhood, and language interlock to form a system of power, a cycle of representation. When an oppressive force controls this machine, the cycle dictates identity. If your history is written by your conquerors, you are left with a fractured, diminished version of yourself. This institutional machine only maintains its grip as long as its narratives are accepted as absolute. Because these systems rely on the consent of the governed to function, marginalized communities can reclaim the gears and change the direction of the cycle. Take the first gear, history. The official timeline is rarely a neutral record of events. It is a narrative shaped by the victors, who control the physical institutions of memory, the archives, the monuments, and the classrooms. Edward Said identified this process in his work on Orientalism. He showed how colonial powers manufactured a specific representation of the East, framing themselves as civilized to justify their rule over those they labeled backward. While the official record is curated in institutions, marginalized communities preserve their own history in the shadows, using oral traditions, folklore, and private memory. Frantz Fanon characterized the active recovery of these suppressed stories as a vital act of resistance against colonial erasure. Today, groups like the Subaltern Studies Collective work to force these excluded voices into the mainstream timeline, directly challenging the official version of the past. Reclaiming these narratives allows people to shift their identity from a state of inherited defeat to one of resilience and agency. This sense of identity is what allows a nation to form. We often focus on this skeleton of a country, the borders, the passports, and the government institutions. But political scientist Benedict Anderson argued that a nation is an imagined community. It exists because people choose to believe they belong to a shared collective. Ernest Renan went further, describing the nation as a daily plebiscite. In his view, a country's soul is found in shared memories and the ongoing desire of a people to live together. Following this logic, a nation can exist and even thrive without owning a single square inch of recognized territory or having a formal government. The Kurdish people are a living example of this. They maintain a distinct national identity and a common destiny despite the absence of an independent geographic state. A nation lives within the mutual agreement of millions of strangers who believe they share a single story. That story is carried by the third gear, language. Because it is the vehicle for all thought and memory, language is the primary target for any power seeking to control a population. In 1835, Thomas Macaulay designed an English education system for India with a clear goal: to create a class of people who were Indian in blood but English in their tastes and opinions. Ngugi wa Thiong'o warns that adopting an oppressor's language leads a people to devalue their own indigenous culture and knowledge. However, language is also highly adaptable. Its fluidity makes it uniquely vulnerable to being hijacked and turned against the colonizer. Writers like Salman Rushdie deliberately bent the rules of English to reflect Indian realities. They forged Indian English, a distinct dialect with its own syntax and rhythms. By inventing new idioms like prepone, they captured the colonial tool and transformed it into a vessel for their own cultural truth. This linguistic adaptation had immediate social consequences. In India today, English serves as a link language that allows anti-caste activists to communicate across regions and bypass local social hierarchies. This completes the cycle, but in the opposite direction. The decolonial approach reverses the flow of power. Marginalized groups use language to carry their own memory. That memory reshapes the concept of the nation, which in turn forces a rewrite of the official history. Maps, textbooks, and dictionaries function as active, ongoing arguments. They are never truly finished. A decolonial perspective challenges us to constantly re-examine who holds the authority to define our past, our sense of belonging, and our words.